Hey everybody. Good morning, afternoon, good evening, arrivederci. How we doing? How we doing?
Hi, humans.
Good morning, good afternoon. Happy Saturday.
That part.
There we
Right,
go.
happy Saturday.
On a long weekend.
Long weekend. Happy Memorial Day weekend, y'all. Y'all, this is Morning Mimosas. As you guys know, we put value in criminal justice, promoting healing and education for our Black community. And while I'm celebrating our Blackness, just wanted to celebrate Miss Fatu for just a second here. We have permanently dropped the on-call part of her status, and she is just our fam that's going to be with us every time she wants to. So
yes,
wanted to reiterate that for you guys that she is permanent, and congratulate her for that.
Confetti.
So excited, guys. No, but today, guys, it's gonna be something that's really, really, really important to all of us. Knowing your rights. Something that we neglect on top of mental health is knowing what's for us and how to fight for it. So our special guest today will be talking to us a little bit about that, and we hope you guys take a listen so you guys know what's for you. Okay? So we're gonna go ahead and welcome Miss Jasmine Ross to Morning Mimosas. Let's welcome her.
Hello, hello, hello.
Grand Rising.
Grand Rising. We are so excited to have you on Morning Mimosas today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Miss Ross.
Yes. So my name is Jasmine, or you can call me Jasmine. I am the Civic Engagement Manager for the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition. I am a Haitian native and also a Colorado native. I've been living in Colorado for 22 years. So that is a little bit about myself. I just wanted to, start with giving some context about the organization. So CCJRC started in 1999 by our executive director, Christy Donner. It started first as the Colorado Prison Moratorium Coalition that formed to support legislation sponsored by Senator Dorothy Rupert, a Democrat in Boulder, and a Representative Penfield Tate, a Democrat in Denver, to end mass incarceration, but also the expansions of the building projects of prisons. It wasn't until 2002 when we moved into the new entity and creating the name, the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition. Our mission is to eliminate the overuse of the criminal justice system and to advance community health and safety. We have been a staff of 6. Within our staff, we have folks that have been impacted directly by the criminal justice system, as well as some board members. To speak on myself, I have not been directly in the system, but I've definitely had close family and friends that have been involved in the system. And so this is why I am part of this work, because as we know, I like to say the legal system, not the criminal justice system, because we don't see a lot of justice in the system, is very horrendous. Okay. And so I wanted to help and be a part of the change, just because there are so many layers to the system that we really do need to look into. I wanted to be in the work and be on the ground and with community, educating folks. So with that being said, I wanted to share some more things that have happened with our organization. In 2007, legislators created the Colorado Commissions on Criminal and Juvenile Justice to make reform recommendations. CCJRC got asked to be a part of that table where we were making recommendations. And again, this is the scope of our work around reentry, parole, sentencing reform, and drug policy, as well as continuing to opposing the expansions of prisons and jails. Some of these success that I wanted to share, again, this organization has been around since 1999. We have had so many great success, but we have passed over 30 different legislation bills. Again, the scope of our work has a lot of involvement with legislation, right? But in particular, there was a bill that we were able to pass where we were getting tens of millions of dollars reinvested back into community from the prison budgets into reentry services. So that was a great success for us. It's still happening. So we're still seeing money put back into community because that is important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, with that being said, in 2009, CCJRC actually helped close 6 prisons in the state of Colorado. As we speak right now, there are 21 prisons in Colorado. We have 19 state prisons and 2 private prisons. I don't have the list of the prisons that we closed, but again, you can find that information on our website at www.ccjrc.org. In 2014, we also had another victory in legislation where we helped create the first ever grant program in the Department of Corrections to fund community-based reentry services. And so this program is called the Wages Program. I am not sure if everyone on here have heard of it. Excuse me, but it stands for Work and Gain Education in Employment Skills. And so with this program, what is so unique about it is it's actually led by justice involved organizations. So folks that have been directly impacted, ones that are navigating and helping those that are coming out or even going into the system. Um, we are a nonpartisan organization, a C3. And I also just wanted to share just some updates of this year's legislation. Within this work, it's a constant tug of war, right? One year we're doing great. Next year, we're having some challenges with senators and representatives up at the Capitol. But one bill in particular that we were really saddened about that actually did get passed was the DOC budget. So they have $1 billion of state budgets, and they're actually getting more money to fund for 1,500 beds. And so, of course, we were in oppose of this bill, but unfortunately it passed. Again, we're all about putting money back into community. Because that's very important to have the programs in community. And we have seen that the recidivism rates have actually gone down with having these programs. So that is the constant fight that we are facing in this time. But on a positive note, I wanted to share some of the legislative work that we've been able to pass in the state of Colorado, or we have been a support of. So with the Office of Respondent Parent Counsel, they passed House Bill 1024, which is relative and kin placement of a child. Again, we have legislative updates, newsletters, action alerts that we send to our members. We have over 10,000 members with the organization. So again, if you would like to read more about this information, sign up and become a member, and you guys can get the legislative updates. There was also Senate Bill 39, which reduced child and incarcerated parent separation. Because, a lot of times the system thinks they know best for a family, and we're saying, no. So we need to still have that connectedness with families that have been incarcerated with their children. And then we did some sentencing reform bills, House Bill 1292, which enhanced sentences, meaning creating a second look in resentencing. So that passed. And then House Bill 1293, which is the felony reclassification. bill passed, meaning assigning felonies to a different class level. So we're really looking back at the different felonies in their classes and saying, okay, does this person or does this level of crime need to be classified in this way? House Bill 1133 was also passed, and that is around the cost of phone calls for persons in custody. And so it would require the Department of Corrections to cover 25% of the cost of phone calls. And so by the year 2025, the phone calls would then be free. So that is just an update of the legislative work. Again, I am the expertise in our civic engagement, which I will get into later around the voting. But I just wanted to check in and see if there are any questions.
First of all, thank you for your work.
Okay.
Thank
Truly.
For real.
Seriously, I'm amazed that I was sitting here in awe of all of it. I'm like,
you.
and this is my niche, so I
I
love
feel
it.
the feels. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's so much. I like the word reform.
Mhm.
I can tell that there's a lot of mental health happening in a positive light. And of course, you know, it's the bad light shines on, they get the extra beds, but they're taking that from the community. And so they are doing something on the back end to destroy the community more to fill those beds. And that's also disheartening, all while displacing children from their families, which allows them to occupy the beds because, you know, yeah, it's a vicious cycle.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. I would say with me being in this work, I've really have taken notice of the narrative, right, that they push around criminal justice. They always want to show the negative, and it's like there's so much positivity. Like with me being in the spaces with the different organizations that are led by justice involved people, we're talking about people that did 13 plus years in prison, right? And they came back out and gave back to their community. So that is the storytelling that this organization is putting more out there, because society for decades have been stuck on this negative narrative that criminals are always going to be criminals, and that's
Right. Agreed.
Yeah, that's how they keep the cycle going, because then you're not hired, you can't get employment that will take care of yourself. So then you go back to what led you to be where you were in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still so much work we got to do, right? Because again, there's so many layers, and this has been the what's the word I'm looking for? The cycle, right? In this country, locking people away. We think that's the best, and it's not. And the other thing that we're really focusing in, what I'm really focusing in, is talking about the atmosphere in the system that they've created, right? Because we can look at the criminal legal system in other European countries like Norway. It's not set up in the same capacity as we have it, where folks are dealing more with mental health, and it's because of the atmosphere that they are living in. So how do we change that? And so I have a lot of great strategic ideas of what we could do better, to really look into people's mental health, you know.
For sure.
Because it's directly impacted for sure.
So are there any current campaigns that you're working on right now that you could get us involved in, or anyone who's listening?
Yes, I'm so happy you said that. So I run the civic engagement, and a lot of the civic engagement work that I do involves voting, because again, this is so important, right? As we see, everything around us involves voting. So I started the jail-based voting efforts. So we went back in 2016. We partnered with the Denver sheriff to conduct voter registration inside the jails. And with that being said, there was actually a rulemaking when we partnered with the Secretary of State's office in 2018 to mandate that all jails, right? So we have 60 or 61 jails because we have 64 counties in the state of Colorado, but all 61 jails had to put a process plan for how they're going to give access to eligible voters inside. So that
That's
was the
what's up.
rulemaking. I know, it was so exciting
What's up?
to get that going and to actually make the facilities do their job, right, and not contribute to marginalization. So that happened in 2018, and then in 2019 we passed the law, House Bill 1266, which restored voting rights for folks on parole. Before then, folks had to complete their parole in order to vote, but now we've changed the law to where if they're on parole, even federal supervised release, they are eligible to vote in the state of Colorado. So this year, because we have the Denver mayoral election race happening, we actually had a 51% turnout rate in the jails, in the Denver jails, and that's bigger
impressive.
Amazing.
than
Very impressive.
and that's bigger than folks out here in community, voters out here in community. We have like what, a 36%, and so this really, the narrative really showed that yes, justice involved people do care about politics. They do care about their communities, because again, for folks that have not been impacted or in the system, they have led this narrative that they do not care, and that's not true. So we were very excited to have that turnout rate. We've also are in partnership with Arapahoe County Jail. We're still having to do some work with them because, again, a lot of folks in the facilities make it their personal issue and not looking at it as this is the law and this is their right. And we will be doing some partnership with Jefferson County. So the goal of this whole jail-based voting, and this is actually part of the Voting with Conviction campaign that we have, and there is a separate website called votingwithconviction.org where folks can learn, more about the information. But we are really building the field, building the army. So training other organizations around the importance of voting and how to have the conversation, especially with folks that have been justice involved. I wanted to quickly share some other highlights that we were able to accomplish with our voting efforts. So in 2022, we were able to end prison gerrymandering through testifying and organizing our members from each organization to help us ensure that people that are in prison and jails are counted at their residency prior to their incarceration. So for those of you that's asking why was this so important, it was important that we acted because this practice misrepresented our democratic process by artificially inflating the population count of the political influence of the districts where prisons and jails are located. So yes, we are a state that ended that, and we're just very very hopeful and grateful that we have the support from community, because that's the other thing. Colorado is a very progressive state. We have a lot of support in community around reform, and I believe just folks have had enough with how things have been in the system.
For sure. I know I'm one of them. Okay.
I didn't want to mention, I love that you call, I love the terminology justice involved people. I love that. I'm adding that to my lexicon. That's just such a much healthier, more accurate way to discuss the people that are in these facilities and navigating that system.
Right. And thank you so much. I always say at the end of the day, they're humans. They're not criminals. They're people, right? And also within our system, we have different scenarios of why folks are in the system.
Mhm.
So, and actually, there's a huge number of folks that didn't commit the crime. They are just in the system because they look like they were part of the crime.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's
True
another
that.
conversation to be had.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. So, reform is
Me.
definitely needed. Across this whole nation. And with just our voting efforts, I actually just got back from Puerto Rico. I did a conference there, and it was just, it was so beautiful, just to be in a room with people that are in the same space as me, right? Um, because it does get hard doing this work. And I've had moments where I was crying because I was just so frustrated with the things that I was seeing being done to our people. And this is why it just moves me to continue my work, to continue my legacy, because our people need us and we need to advocate for them.
Mm.
But with that being said, there are 4.6 million folks across the country that are banned from voting due to a felony conviction. Um, in the state of Colorado, I believe that one of our goals, and this is something that I will be working on next year, is some legislation. But we would really want to see that everyone has the right to vote, because at the end of the day, they're all citizens. So their citizenship didn't get taken. And so with that big number, it just goes to show that there are still a lot of people that don't have the opportunity to voice what they want for their communities. And so I just let folks know, especially our Black and brown queens, that, get out there and vote, because you're not only voting for yourself, but you're voting for people that can't be heard. And so it's important that we move and are participating in these election cycles. And as you guys know, the atmosphere, especially in the political world right now, is
Horrible.
Okay.
Horrible.
I'm just,
Horrendous, actually.
yes, like, I'm just shocked that with some of the states like Alabama, Mississippi, Atlanta, Florida,
Texas.
Texas, thank you, they're getting away with passing these horrendous kinds of bills, right? Especially in Jackson, Mississippi, the Jim Crow is coming back, where they are
That.
taking rights away from Black voters. And I'm just like, okay, history is repeating itself. And so this is why it is so important for communities of color to be and showing up at the polls. Because right now what we're seeing is they're trying to test the waters to see if they can get away with it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
unfortunately, they're getting away with it, which is just mind blowing. But going back with the state of Colorado, we conducted the jail-based voting survey, right? Because this program has been going on since 2016. And so with the survey, I really wanted to see what feedback are we needing to better the program and the needs of voters inside the system. So what we got back from the survey was a lot of people still care about voting. There's still a little bit difficulty voting in the jails, right? So how can we make their access better? We produce one of the things that, as the civic engagement manager, we produce materials. So the palm cards of the eligibility. I actually created and produced the jail-based voting video that actually all the jails should be showing, but they're not. So that's some of the work that we are actually having to go back and look into and asking the questions why it's not being shown, because it is educational purpose video of how to vote from the jail, as well as getting folks the information on candidates. So that's one of the biggest areas where I and fighting back and forth with the facilities because, mind you, we produce voter guides, right? It's shared in the community, but for some reason, and I don't know, maybe it's just because we are a reform organization, and a lot of our work is involved around the criminal legal system, but they keep denying our voter guides. And so that's a huge problem because now we're having voters vote for people they don't know. And
Mhm.
now they're contributing to probably a candidate that doesn't have their best interests.
Mhm. That's the reason. Because they know that if they
Yep.
really look into it, they will, especially the ones who are in prison for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And they realize that they can vote those people who have put them there. The unfairness and even the mistreatment, they know that, and they learn that they have that position to vote them out, they will. And they're scared of that.
Mm-hmm. And what's so crazy, and this is another reason why, going back to the survey too, right? I had asked the question, um, what was needed for them to feel like they're involved in this more? And a lot of folks were wanting me to create a Colorado voting guide. I know, Holly, you saw it on my Facebook. I posted it. And I would love folks for you all to go and read it as well. You can find it on the CCJRC website or the Voting with Conviction website. But it's the Colorado Voting Guide. And so what I did was a breakdown explaining different ways of like civic engagement, right? And in this case, we're talking about voting because civic engagement is civically engaging with your community and having a positive impact. And I feel like voting is such a positive impact for all of us. But I did the history of voting, again, covering the eligibility and the law, because again, Colorado does not practice permanent disenfranchisement. So I will get into it shortly of the law, but did the breakdown of elected officials, right? Their roles and responsibilities, as well as the different types of elections we have, and defining the political parties, because that was another big area where folks were asking questions like, what is the Democrat? What is the Republican? But I will say, through my experience in doing the jail-based voting, and I can't say nothing in the time because, I'm in there doing in-person voting with them, and I can't tell them who to vote for. But we're seeing a lot of our justice involved people voting Republican.
Mhm.
That doesn't
By
surprise me.
design.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was definitely one of the reasons why I created this guide. So that way folks could really see the definitions of the parties. But also to that point, next year, I actually just wrote up a curriculum for a civic engagement 101 course in the jails because we still need some more time with our people and having these kinds of conversations. So I will be teaching civic engagement based off of this guide and really having deeper conversations with our voters about which party is which. So that way we're not seeing folks voting for people that don't have the best intentions for them. Because that's my biggest concern.
Ooh, it's a lot.
Wow, wow, wow.
I know.
Wow.
It's a lot. It's a lot to take in.
Yes,
Um,
it is.
and it's a lot of course we know that there's a lot of disheartening stuff going on, but in maliciousness with having them vote a certain way and not really being honest and forthcoming to what they're voting for,
Yeah.
a false sense of you have the right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And because I did not share this yet, but let me just go over the eligibility for folks in the state of Colorado with criminal backgrounds on who can and cannot vote. Again, this was House Bill 1266, so you can actually Either look it up on the Secretary of State's website or the legislative website on this bill to read more about it in the law. But I'm just going to go through who can and cannot vote in the state of Colorado. So if you're on pretrial detainee in jail or on a bond or summons awaiting trial, you are eligible to vote. If you are currently serving a sentence in jail for a misdemeanor, you are eligible to vote. If you're on probation for a misdemeanor or on probation for a felony, you are eligible to vote. If you were sentenced by a court to the halfway house, i.e., a diversion client, meaning that you were diverted to the halfway house and never was sent to prison, you are eligible to vote. If you have a past criminal conviction and served your sentence, and I'll say this again, if you have a past criminal conviction and have served your sentence, you are eligible to vote. If you're on parole after release from state prison or on federal supervised release, which is another way of saying parole, for folks that were in the feds, you are eligible to vote. You cannot vote in Colorado if you are serving a felony sentence in a jail or a prison. So meaning that you have been convicted for that felony in a jail or a prison, you cannot vote. And if you're on DOC inmate status, living in a community corrections halfway house, or on non-residential status, living in community, i.e. a transition client, you are not eligible to vote because you are still under the Department of Corrections.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a lot of people who actually can vote and don't realize that they can vote.
Can.
Yes.
That's a lot of people.
That was actually one of my questions. People who have felonies who are free, why aren't they knowledgeable of their rights? Like, why?
I would say because they have been brainwashed to think that they don't have this right and that we are the same as any other state. Again, Colorado doesn't practice permanent disenfranchisement. So, and there's no restitution. So you don't have to pay. Once you're off papers, you are good. And I wanted to give you guys this number. On any given day, there are 125,000 adults in Colorado who are currently involved in the criminal justice system that are actually eligible to vote. And hundreds of thousands of folks that are out in community, right? Because we have folks coming home all the time that are eligible to vote. So if you were to ask me the reasons why we do this is because, again, we have seen that just from the conversations we've had with our folks in community that they still don't know this information. And that is why we created the Palm Card, our new version of the Palm Card, where we actually state the law. So folks can hang it up in their fridge or, share it with their family and friends, because again, this knowledge is power. And so knowing your rights is very important when it comes to voting, because they can hit you with a class 5 felony if you're not eligible to vote. So it'll be another felony on top of whatever you are serving.
Jeez Louise. Yeah. And that's what keeps
What?
people away because they don't know.
Yep.
And they don't want to find out the hard way.
Right. You get afraid to do wrong.
And that's the other, to answer your question, Holly, that's the fear tactic of why, folks don't vote, and also why they don't know their eligibility, because they know, okay, if I do vote, then I can get hit with a class 5 felony.
Is there a way for them to find out ahead of time if they're eligible or not?
So that's another thing we're working, especially with the election division, right? Because I feel like it would make sense when someone is coming home, they should get notified that they are eligible, like a letter in the mail, like, hey, you guys are eligible to vote. But what we have seen, and that the DMV is doing, is when folks, come out and they have to go get their IDs and things like that, the DMV will actually let them know, like, hey, we have you registered automatically as a voter. Do you want to continue this, or would you like to be taken off? So the DMV has a process, but again, I think it's best to hit them with more information just at the DMV and actually get the election division to send a letter in the mail for our folks that are coming back home.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go ahead and read a comment here. It says it's all to keep the marginal. It's all to keep the marginalized even more marginalized. The more rights they have, the more they can start to tear down the system, and they can't have that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a war with this reform stuff. I tell you, it's like, you know, when I have conversations with my different mentors and stuff, I really be asking them, like, what is it that I'm not going to say all white people, you know, but the majority of white folks, like, what is their issue with keeping us in these, you know, conditions and positions? Like, why can't we as people have the same rights? Like, what is their fear, you know?
The
And
takeover.
Mm-hmm.
you know we will.
Yes.
You know we will. And again, so yeah, it's just it's a hard space to be in. I'm not gonna lie, it is, especially as a Haitian woman, being in the rooms with some of the district attorneys and stuff like that, that say that they're very progressive when they're not. In the district, I was gonna say the mayors and things like that. I don't know. It just be hard because I just feel like with me being in these spaces with these candidates in these positions, they're not doing their job the best way I think they could be. And I'm really pushing for accountability. And what does that look like, right? Especially when it comes to the district attorneys, because they are the ones, and judges as well. They are the ones that are the gateways to our criminal legal system and putting someone behind bars. And a lot of them take advantage of it. And so what does accountability look like for us in community? And so I always encourage our community members to show up at the candidate forums, ask the questions, put pressure on our candidates that are in these positions. Because what we see is like, yeah, they'll get in the position, they'll get into the door, but then community goes silent. So how can we continue to hold them accountable in order for us to see change, right? So that's just my 2 cents, is to be active in elections, because again, this is a reminder, everything involves voting, believe it or not. Your schools, the places you eat, your housing, the criminal justice lens, like everything involves voting. So I just encourage folks to please get out there and vote, because we need you. And the atmosphere in this political world that we're sitting in right now is under attack.
Severely, yeah.
Very much so. My goodness.
I feel that with a lot of transplants and people moving from other places in the country where it was, I would say, more blatant and more in your face on how they're trying to suppress people's rights. I think that a lot of people in Colorado specifically feel kind of safe because they do believe that the people representing us and the people in power are more progressive. But they are more progressive, but not necessarily with the best interest for marginalized people. And I feel people don't really like to have that conversation. Like, oh, you're just paranoid. I'm like, if you look at it, we're still not the priority here. Just because it's progressive doesn't mean that it's for us.
I was going to ask the 3 of y'all, what does that progressive look like? Like what does that look like for them to you all there? what does that look like? They're progressive because they have a black friend, or like, I don't even see how that would be in their favor unless they're really our allies making it better for us there.
Well, they do look at the criminal or the legal system a little differently,
Mhm.
just because of the demographics here. So a lot of justice involved people do look like them, not just like us.
Ah, okay.
So that gives them more incentive to get involved with that, but they're still not really thinking about all of the other layers that apply to people that don't look like them.
Yeah, I was wondering because that was the thing that both of you all echoed, progressive. So I'm like, how is that helping us really, or is it just helping them? And by way of default, it's helping us.
Would you say that's a correct assessment?
Yes. And also what I wanted to add, and what I've just noticed from being in this work for almost 7 years now, is like, damn, it's really hard for people to just do right.
Mm.
Do right. It's not that hard, you know? And that's just another frustration that I have, is like, people that are in these positions and that have the power, they always want to selfishly think for themselves and do the wrong thing, and not actually do the right and the best interest for the whole community. And the other thing I wanted to share with you guys, because I am a data geek,
I love it.
another narrative that they're not talking about, just from the data, because again, I get data from the Department of Corrections. Like, I can ask for a core request of how many folks they have in the system, what are they in there for, how long is their sentence, and things like that. But another narrative that is not being pushed is actually what I saw within the data I received, was that there's more white folks going into the system as well. Why aren't we talking about that?
Mm.
So, and then to add to that, we're seeing a lot of women in our system as well. So again, they always like to cover and hide the truth and not speak and push one narrative out. And we're the kind of reformer organization where we're like, oh no, we want to tell it all. And we
Mhm.
need to pay attention to these things because they are happening. So just wanted to put that out there.
I honestly believe that is why you see more white people getting involved, is because they are seeing more of people that look like them getting into the system. So now they have incentive, but even when they're trying to look out for them, they're only looking out for them. They're not acknowledging the other layers and community resources that other communities need.
Yep. And I'm glad that you said that they're only looking out for them, because as we can see what with the drug issues that we're seeing in our country, right? With the fentanyl and things like that. Some states have actually passed laws where they actually have a safe site using in the state of Colorado. We are still pushing for that. Again, I have my mixed feelings about it, because again, drugs affected our community in a different way than it affected the white community, and that's a part that's not being talked about. But I do agree of having safe site bases for our people to go to and not be criminalized for drug use and things like that. But I just lost my train of thought because I just have so much in my mind right now. With that being said, going back to your statement of them just only doing it for their purposes. It should not have to be that way. I really see that we should also be looked at the same way as they are looking and caring for their white folks that are involved. It shouldn't have to take a white person to overdose to make, actions happen and things like that.
Yeah.
It should have already been there is what I'm trying to get across.
Agreed.
Agreed. Yeah, that's been the catalyst for the shift in the justice system and drugs. The catalyst has been its impact on the white community.
Because they said it for
And
us.
that's
And because they imitate and want to be us, then they overdo it.
Mm-hmm.
And then now we got to fix it.
Yep.
That's exactly. Huh.
Yeah.
It's so ugly, though. I mean, it's just people make mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and they are serving time for those mistakes. They shouldn't have every right stripped from them. They shouldn't have humanity stripped from them. But they do, especially if your skin is not a certain color or a certain paleness. Absolutely.
Yep.
and
Go ahead, love. Sorry.
I was just going to say that's true. They do strip away our rights, and a lot of these crimes or offenses are poverty driven or just lack of resources in a lot of different areas. It's lack of resources, lack of community, lack of connection, and that is the first thing they try to do when they release these people from the centers is continue to isolate them, so it still keeps them boxed in.
Yeah. I was gonna say what I believe with the governor that we have, Polis. Don't get me started.
All of y'all's faces just told me.
Yeah. So yeah, he is not what he, says he is, in my opinion, just as a voter and separate from the organization. But we do a lot of partnership with, I don't know if you all have heard of Second Chance Center. It's the #1 reentry service. The founder of Second Chance Center actually sits on our board. So we actually went to their annual event a couple weeks ago. And they showed a video of folks that got clemency, right? And I believe there was only like 46 people under Governor Polis that have gotten clemency. That's very small, right?
It's very low.
46.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what we working with.
Yeah, sounds about yes. 46.
That's ridiculous. I hope no one is proud of that. That's their number, because that's not anything to be proud of. I mean, yes, it could be lower, but that's still very low.
Yeah.
Extremely low.
Yep. And mind you, we have the elder population, right, in the system that have been in there from like the 1990s, 1980s, that are just sitting there.
The elderly.
Yes, I love my elders, respect them always. But they're actually able to be on special needs parole, because what we're seeing with our elderly population is that a lot of them are sick. Like a lot of them are dying in the jail or the prisons. And why aren't we bringing them home? But of course, the other side is like, oh, there's still a threat to society. And I'm just like,
I feel like after a certain age, you're not.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be, depending on what you did.
We've seen true crime.
That's true. But when you're like 90 years old, what are you really doing?
Yeah, some people just want to be home by at that point and live on the rest of their lives on their terms,
Yep. And also what we've seen too with folks that have been in the system for a long time is their mindset changes. So again,
For
going
sure.
back with the other side and what they're pushing and the narrative that they're saying is that, oh, these people don't change. And that's not true. There's been a lot of folks in the system where they grew and are doing things to better themselves, but also better their community. But also, how do you, I have to give respect to people that are behind bars, just with that mentality, and being in a space like that, but still being positive and still being hopeful. And I'm just doing the work to really get them home. Because we do need them home. There's so many missing Black men, missing Black women from their households, and it's just time. It's just time.
I feel like they don't believe that they can change because the system doesn't change.
There it is.
And they don't.
So how can I believe that somebody else is really changing when they really are, because we're not changing?
And the environment isn't conducive for change.
That part.
Like,
yep.
So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to read the two comments from Mr. Paul. The first one says, there is another issue here, and that's big pharma. They prey on all humans with legal opioids and then don't provide adequate insurance to keep affording them. So people have to turn to harder drugs. And then he also says that there are people serving life for marijuana, let them all out. I don't really understand that whole serving life for marijuana thing, but
that's insane. But even going back to the first comment that he made, I think it's interesting that, physicians who swore an oath to help people are getting people hooked on these drugs, and they're not being held accountable for what happens after the fact.
Yep.
okay.
Because too many people have talked about the drugs after surgeries that people are given that you get hooked on. And there is nothing, I don't believe that they're telling people that this is an addictive medication. And you don't know, they don't take the time to find out people's histories, because in your genealogy, you can have that gene that you cannot take this medication. You could have one drink or one hit of the blunt and you are gone. Like, all of the things that go into it, they are not really digging in with people. They're just thinking about how much money they're getting on their end, and then they get rid of them. And then these people, yes, are going out and fixing that high because, yes, it is high, it's expensive to get these pills. And why are they not being held accountable? Why is this drug still being given to people even today?
So this is kind of with that point that you're making. Why isn't anybody being held accountable, right? Fentanyl is a controlled substance in these hospitals, right? How is it on the street? I just want to say that one more time. They're in the hospitals, right? How are they being leaked onto these streets? I'm telling these doctors and nurses or whoever is running these things, they need to be held accountable, because it's getting insane.
They're beating the crash carts and the medication carts, and acting like they're giving it to patients in small doses, but they're really not. They're keeping it and making money on the side. It's
all goes back to money.
Yeah,
it really does all go back to money.
Yeah, the root of all evil is the love of money. Because
capitalism at its finest.
At its finest.
And that's why they want to keep us in there.
Yep, money.
Yep, that's exactly why.
That's why they got all those new beds, instead of putting money in the books for the babies and programs to keep them from going to jail.
Yeah. And that's why they're taking the kids away, because a lot of foster care children end up
in jail.
Yep.
And
that's a whole nother soapbox for me. You got these babies being harmed. You take them from their harmful environment. Sometimes it's not a harmful environment, and you put them in a harmful environment. Then they run away, and then it's just a vicious cycle that starts at an early age and continues on. And then once you're in,
it's the prison school pipeline.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
So with that said, there's a lot of work to be done. A lot of
No,
work.
seriously,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful for people like Miss Ross, who's doing the work with
Mhm.
what she's doing, people like Fatu who are going back to school to get their criminal justice, me going back to get my paralegal so we can all have a voice in
Yep.
this thing. I mean, this is just ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
It's
And I think
very
another thing that bothers me about Arapahoe jail, is
Oof.
that you guys remember James Holmes, right? The one that did the Aurora
Mm-hmm.
shooting.
Yep.
They ended up moving him to, I think, Pennsylvania or something, because he kept getting beat up in the prisons here. But I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I understand reform, but when it comes to like situations like that, I'm like, you
Mm,
should have kept him where he committed the crime. He needs
yep.
to pay for his sins here. Don't move him because all of a sudden he's being harmed. Like, it's just a whole bunch of stuff that just needs to be
But
fixed. Chris,
also, don't they have people in place to make sure that these things don't happen, or are they the ones causing the harm?
I need a drink.
Sip on this moment.
ooey, because that's
It's just a whole. It's an onion.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's basically
Yep.
what it is. It's an onion.
And
And just when you conquer one little layer, another one pops up, and it could be worse than the one that you're just finished conquering.
yep. And one of the phrases I'll say that my ED and my mentor have said to me is, we won't see the end in our lifetime of mass incarceration, right?
Mhm.
Because there's just so much work that still needs to be done.
Mhm.
To be honest with you, because I will be moving into a different space. Next year will be my last year with the organization, but I want to start my own consulting because there's just still a lot of things that I'm like, okay, we need this, we need that, and we don't have it here. But I would really love to start an organization where we are looking back into people's cases, and
Mhm.
You know my bells.
this.
Yes,
So this
be a
this
life.
sounds like something I'm doing.
Yeah.
yes, looking back into their cases, and also the information that's written right on their cases, because we have technology now, because right, technology is advancing, where people can look into the DNA and things like that. So especially for those that were wrongly convicted of a crime, I
I'm
really
liking
want
this.
to.
Mm-hmm.
I want to dive deeper into that, and then also have a space where we can support the families that have been impacted. Because another thing I realized is, to be honest with you, a lot of the families that have been impacted, they can sue.
See,
You know
they
what I'm
can
saying?
and should.
And they should. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Deja vu for me. This is all deja vu
Take
for
those
me. So
coins so they'll think about what they're doing.
Yep.
Mhm.
So I want to get more families out there sharing their stories, but also knowing that they have a safe space and a place and a support system and a team that has their back in order to do that. Because again, this goes back into accountability. We have to hold the people that made the system
Yeah.
accountable.
yes, like just I'm trying not to shout
The
here.
word of the day: accountable.
Accountable.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness.
Yeah.
I do have a
We
question
definitely have to talk
that's
after
off
this.
topic. How do you take care of your mental health while dealing with all of this
Mhm.
so that you don't burn
Mm.
out?
Whew. That's such a good question. I will say this: I do therapy, right? Because the stuff that I'm in, it's trauma. It's
Yeah.
very traumatic for me. And with my history being Haitian,
Mm.
there's just trauma.
It's layers on layers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a lot of time with my therapist. I also make sure to go do some self-care, like getting a massage at least twice a month. Um, and just staying really positive and knowing that what I'm doing is right and it feels right. And yes, I will have, like I mentioned earlier, breakdowns where I'm crying, but it's because I'm very passionate about my work and the people that are involved. So I would say that's my self-care. And then, of course, being able to have these open dialogues with our beautiful kings and queens, and just being able to share my knowledge and also learn from community as well, is how I do a lot of my self-care.
Thought that was important to ask because I mean
Very
you do
important.
good work, but I know that it is not just hard, probably physically, but mentally and emotionally and
Mhm.
spiritually taxing to deal with the enemy day in and day out while trying to do the best for your people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then also being, I'm 26 years old, right? And I feel like a lot of times when I'm up at the Capitol testifying or just in meetings and different rooms with these elected officials in these positions, they don't take me seriously, not only because I'm a young Black woman, but also, because of the age difference too. They don't take me serious. But it's okay. I show up and I show out and I say what I got to say. And that's just
Let me
that.
see, this is my hand.
Okay.
I definitely have faced some challenges of being respected in this work with people that don't look like me.
For sure.
Wow, wow, wow.
And if
Well,
I'm
I
not mistaken, you're
appreciate
the
you and
only
the
one
work
that
that
looks
you
like
do.
you
Sorry, Kay.
of the six. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was
I'm
just gonna
sorry.
say. I was gonna say, if I'm not mistaken, you're the only one in the, at least on the website, that looks like you. You're like the single voice in
Mm-hmm.
the of the members. So I just really wanted to applaud you. I did not know you were only 26. That just
Right.
elevates how impressed I am with you. And
Right.
um, oof. We really do need to start listening to younger people, and we have to keep that fresh in our minds as we get older too, because they are living through whatever we built or failed to build the foundation for.
You're absolutely right.
Seriously.
You know, the
Completely
youth are
agree.
the change. They're the change, right? And every generation is getting better and better and better. And to some point, I have to believe that there's going to be a change. There has to be a change.
Change is arriving.
Mm-hmm.
Change is arriving, and people need to just be they just need to get ready. Because ready or not, here it comes. They can't hide.
Hey.
That part.
Yes. And really this work has also made me realize that, maybe I should be the governor or the mayor one day. Cause
Boom.
so I'm really looking into that kind of space too. And
You got my vote.
thank you.
Okay. We need that.
There's organizations here to support us, especially for youth that are looking into wanting to run and how to run. So that is something I'm very interested in down the line, is representing for my state and doing better.
Love it, love it, love it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miss Ross, for coming on. I feel like I'm older than you and I'm calling you Miss Ross, but respect is there. So Miss Ross.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on Morning Mimosas today. Guys, it has been chock full of information, and I hope you guys retained something today. Okay. This is what Morning Mimosas is about. And we have to talk about what you were just talking about, because I'm actually starting a nonprofit talking about every single thing you just stated. So we definitely need to chat.
Yes.
But as you guys know, this is Morning Mimosas, where we put value in criminal justice. We promote healing and education for our Black community. We will see you guys soon. Ta-ta.
Bye, humans.